guys, it's Ashley and today is Father's Day. So in honor of Father's Day, today's video is going to be about the books that I have read over the years, my many years of being a bookworm, that have been directly inspired by my dad. My dad is a complete fanboy and he is a bookworm. He doesn't read as often as I think he would like to read anymore because he's so busy with his other kids and with working all the time. I just thought that because I'm such a bookworm now and was very heavily influenced by both of my parents, really, my mom and my dad, they were so nurturing about me being a bookworm that it really fostered my love of books eventually. So I just thought that today I would talk about some of the books and some of the fandoms that have kind of been inspired by my dad or that I'm a part of as a result of him. The first one I'm going to talk about is Sherlock Holmes, and you'll have to forgive the dustiness of this particular book. I have about 4 different versions of the complete Sherlock Holmes series, and the reason for that is because people keep buying them for me and have been for at least like 10 years now because they know how obsessed I am. Definitely the reason I am obsessed with it is because my dad is, and he has been for a very long time. He knows all of the iterations of Sherlock Holmes. I just really love Sherlock Holmes. I really love his dryness and his antisocial tendencies, and I love Watson as a character. I love the mysteries themselves. They're very smart, and I think that a lot of other books have tried to copy them since then and haven't quite succeeded. A couple have probably been as prolific and well done as Sherlock Holmes, but not many, so this book is so heavy. I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan. It will always be near and dear to my heart, and it is a direct result of how much my dad loved it and how much he showed it while I was growing up. The next one I'm going to talk about is Rex Stout's Nero Wolfe series. The reason I picked these up is because they're incredibly Sherlock Holmesy. When I first was looking at them back when I used to work at a bookstore, I was reading the back of it, and Nero Wolfe as a character sounded so much like Sherlock Holmes, and the story itself, when I started reading the first like 15 pages, felt like a Sherlock Holmes story but taking place in 1900s America. And that really appealed to me, and then I did a little bit of research, found out that there are some fan theories that Nero Wolfe is a direct descendant of Sherlock Holmes, and then I pretty much just lost my shit. And so I have a whole bunch of these Nero Wolfe mysteries, probably about 19 altogether. I've read 3 or 4. I really enjoy them. If you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes and detective style mysteries, especially if you like older mysteries, I would definitely give these a try. Like I said, I was a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes and still am, and so I saw that it was very akin to those books, and so I decided to pick this up, and I'm pretty sure my dad has read these too, and maybe even seen I think there was a TV show based on Nero Wolfe, and I think he's seen that TV show too, now that I'm thinking about it. Next we have a fandom that's not really book related, but it does have books in it, and I do own many of the books related to this fandom, and that is Doctor Who. I definitely would not be into Doctor Who today if it weren't for my dad and his loving it for all the years. He's watched them since forever, since I think like the 4th Doctor. I think the 4th Doctor and the 12th Doctor are his favorites. I started watching this as it was coming out in David Tennant's last season, I think, was my first season. He was really enjoying David Tennant, and so I started watching them. It's now probably my favorite TV show of all time. That one and Gilmore Girls are my 2 favorite TV shows of all time. And actually, Gilmore Girls is my mom's favorite show. We always watch it together. Doctor Who is my dad's favorite TV show. We always used to watch it together. There's definitely a direct relation to why those 2 TV shows are my 2 favorites now that I'm thinking about it. This I just actually picked up. It is Doctor Who Time Lord Fairy Tales, which sounds like the best thing ever. And look at this cover. It's so beautiful. Oh, it's so cool. And on the back it says, "We are all stories in the end," which is a Matt Smith line. We are all stories in the end, so make it a good one, eh? Thanks for that, Dad. Now I am a full-fledged Whovian who is considering a Doctor Who tattoo. Next we have classical mythology, specifically Greek mythology, which I actually ended up being one of my majors in college. I double majored in English Lit and in Ancient Greek Classical Studies. I was taking a bunch of English classes, and then I realized I could take Greek classes too, which is like a huge eye-opener, and it was so much fun to just study these texts and learn Ancient Greek and be all analytical. My dad has always been a big fan of all different kinds of mythology, like Egyptian, Greek, I think he's a fan of Celtic, according to a conversation we just recently had. Roman, Norse mythology, he like knows about all of it. Specifically Greek is what I latched onto. Again, I ended up studying it, so it was a huge, huge influence. I've been trying to get him to read the Percy Jackson series. I'm pretty sure he's read like the first 2. Unfortunately, he's also seen the first 2 movies with me. I wish I could go back in time and erase that because those movies are horrendous, as we all know. Greek mythology is a huge part of my life now. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk to him about these myths now that I know them so in depth and can kind of keep up with him regarding them. Next, we have Shakespeare. My dad is a huge, huge Shakespeare fan. We watch Much Ado About Nothing, the one with like Denzel Washington and Keanu Reeves and Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson. We watched that together quite a few times, and I'm not sure if it's his favorite play. He knows it pretty in depth, but he's read so many different Shakespeare plays, and I love Shakespeare. I loved studying him in college. I took a couple of different Shakespeare classes because they all were different and had something different to offer, and the syllabus for each one always included a different selection of plays and sonnets, so you get something different every time you took it, and it was always incredibly enjoyable. You can always get so much out of a Shakespeare play. He was so ahead of his time and has such a robust vocabulary than we did. There are some words now that exist because Shakespeare made them up, and there also are like thousands of words that he used that we don't even use anymore, and that's kind of a tragedy in and of itself. I just love Shakespeare, and I'm pretty sure the reason is because I know that my dad loves it, and so it felt like it was a way to connect with him. I felt like if I loved Shakespeare and he loved Shakespeare, we could like talk about it a lot and have something to bond over, so I think that's where that stems from. But yeah, go Shakespeare! Oh, that Shakespeare book was really heavy, no joke. And finally, we have Edgar Allan Poe. Any of his works, really. My dad is a pretty big fan of Edgar Allan Poe. I feel like I remember in my past, anytime I would catch him reading, more often than not, it would be Edgar Allan Poe. And yeah, he's a really big fan of Poe, as well as any sort of like modern fiction that's based on Poe, like The Poe Shadow by Matthew Pearl. I really like Edgar Allan Poe because it's always a nice break from what I usually read. Like I usually read really old classics that are from like England, or I'm reading young adult books, or I'm reading fantasy books. This is so different from all that, and it's always really nice to go back and come back to something familiar like Edgar Allan Poe, and it's just really timeless, really fun, really great stories that really keep you nail biting. It's just really impressive, the imagination that Edgar Allan Poe had, and I always kind of feel privileged that he wrote down all of these stories that were like in his mind, and he took the time to pen them, and that we get to read them now. And they just like have stood the test of time, and I just think they're wonderful stories to go back to, and they're usually really easy to read because they're so action heavy. So I like coming back to these, but I do know that my dad very thoroughly enjoys these. Saw these being read by him all the time, so figured I'd pick them up and see what all his fuss was about regarding Edgar Allan Poe, and yeah, I really, really enjoy Poe now. And that's it. Those are all of the books that I wanted to talk about today. If you're watching this, Dad, hi and happy Father's Day, and let me know down in the comment section below what books that you have read either with your dad, or books you've read that were inspired by your dad, or any books about dads even that you've read that you want to recommend to me. And if you want to see more videos from me, please subscribe. Happy reading!